In the spring of 1673, a scholar in eastern China fell critically ill. No one expected him to survive. 3 days later, though, he stood up, dressed himself, and what followed is still without explanation. But before we begin, if you're drawn to stories with mystery, meaning, and the otherworldly, to legends passed down as truth, then this is the channel for you. I share 2 new stories each week drawn from folklore, forgotten history, and strange events that linger at the edge of belief. So tap the like button and subscribe with all notifications on so you never miss what's next. Let's begin. Song Tao was not a man that many people remembered. He was a county-level scholar with no patronage. He had no ambition for office, and he lived a modest life, a quiet life, taking care of his mother in Yunzhou. He enjoyed that life, but he received no recognition. Then, in early spring, he just collapsed. He had a little bit of a fever. He didn't have any wound anywhere. It wasn't clear what was going on with him. 3 days passed, and then on the 4th day, there was a knock at the door. A messenger stood there, and he had a long robe. He was holding a scroll, and then he had this big horse behind him. The messenger then said, "The examination has begun." Someone kind of was like, wait, no, the grand examiner isn't due this month. No reply from the guy, just kind of this weird look. But it was one of those, like, you couldn't read the expression on his face. Song then looked back into his house, looked at his mother resting, grabbed his robe, put it on, and followed the guy. They started off, they were on the horse. They each had their own horse, and they rode deep into the forest. Now, the forest that they entered, the trees not only grew taller as they entered, but they were closer together. So when the horse kind of had to, they had to slow down. Sometimes they had to walk with the horses. And then as they entered, the light was very dim beneath the canopy, and it had this very damp, this very heavy, cool feeling. Finally, they arrived at the regional magistrate's compound. Now, this compound was nothing like Song had imagined. There were these really big courtyards, these giant pillars, and it almost seemed like the water was incredibly still in the ponds. Song was then led into a hall, and at the far end, there were these 10 officials, and they were all lined up, and there was this table that was a black lacquered table. And they were wearing all of these very ancient looking robes, very formal. The guy in the center, he just radiated command. He had this calm, this massive presence, but he didn't actually say anything. He just kind of gestured toward the courtyard. So Song looked over there, and he saw that 2 tables had been prepared, and there was already another guy at one of the tables. His name was Zhang Qi. He was kind of thin, and he had these sharp features, but he had these very quiet, these very peaceful eyes. He sat down. A slip of paper fell in between them. It read, 一人二人有心无心, 1 man, 2 men, by intention, without intention. Now, Zhang Qi picked up his brush and he just started to write immediately. Song, on the other hand, sat there and thought, 1 man, 2 men, by intention, without intention. He picked up his brush and he started to write. He wrote, "Those who are virtuous by intention, though virtuous, shall not be rewarded. Those who are wicked without intention, though wicked, shall receive no punishment." He stepped forward. He read this to the panel of judges. There was a silence, then a murmur. The lead examiner looked at him. "There is a vacancy in Henan. You are to take it." Song kind of he tightened up a little. So I was just, "May I ask, sir, what is the post?" "Your duties," the examiner said, "will be made clear upon arrival." Everything was silent. Then Song bowed. "I cannot accept." The Whole room just shifted. "I am not refusing out of pride," he said. "My mother, she's 72. She's the only person who I've loved. I've given up all other posts, all other opportunities to take care of her. I cannot leave now. I can't leave for anything." And then one of the officials kind of leaned over and whispered. Another guy stood up, exited, and then moments later he came back with this chart and this thick book. He says, looking at the book, "She has 9 years by my celestial reading. Then she will pass peacefully." Someone was like, "Well, what if you're wrong? What if she lives to 90? What if she needs me in her final hour? What am I to do then?" The lead examiner, he stayed unmoved. Song pressed further. You're asking me to abandon the only thing that I love. I only love my mom. My whole thing is taking care of her. For this title that I don't understand, from you guys up here all dressed in your robes and whatnot and looking at books and predicting the stars. I mean, what is this? Zhang Qi, the guy next to him, the scholar, could see that Song was getting frustrated. So he stepped forward and he said, "I will take the post, temporarily, until you return." The examiners kind of talked it over. "For your piety," the leader said finally, "you are granted 9 years furlough. Then you will be summoned again." So Song, he didn't agree or reject anything. He just stood up, gave them a nod, exited the hall, and got on the horse that he rode in on. But right when he got on the horse, it bucked and violently threw him, and he landed on the ground, and then everything went black. When he woke up, he was... Wait, where am I? He was trapped in a coffin, and his mother, outside the coffin, heard him crying, going, "Ah, let me out!" So she opened it, and he was alive. He was fine. The illness had passed. They thought he was dead. That's why they put him in the coffin. But he was very confused. So he went about his life. 9 years passed. And then his mother died peacefully in her sleep. Now, Song performed all the rites, all the rituals. He did this alone as no family remained. So after washing and dressing, he laid down in the clothes that he had worn that day, and he closed his eyes. When he opened them, he was standing yet again in that courtyard. Now, there was the same horse, same officials, and they were all wearing the same thing. It looked like they had not aged at all, even though 9 years had passed. Now, this time, when he entered, they bowed to him. "You've returned," said the leader, "on your own." Song kind of looked past them, and he saw in the back on the wall, there was 2 characters written. Zhang Qi. He said, "Zhang Qi, didn't that guy die?" The examiner nodded his head and said, "The day that you woke up in the coffin, he did not. He held your place honorably." At that point, Song kind of had a minor freak out. "Does that mean that I'm dead now?" "You died last night," the examiner said, "and now the choice is before you." Song just kind of stood there. "You may pass on," the examiner said, "or accept the post that awaits you." Song kind of leaned forward a little. "What post?" The lead examiner then stood up. He had this great presence. "The position of Cheng Huang, guardian of the souls of your county, the keeper of balance between the living and the dead. It is not a reward, it is a burden." Someone was like, "Whoa. Okay, well, what if I say no?" "Then your spirit will move on like everyone else, your memories wiped away." So Song turned, he looked towards the exit, and he just saw the nothingness out there. And then he turned back, looked at the examiners and said, "I buried my mother. Now I will bury myself." The examiner lowered his head. "You are ready." And with that, the head examiner, who had spoken before, he stepped forward, and in a very deep voice he said, "You did not recognize me, but I have always been here. My name is Guan Yu. I am the god of war." The others, officials only in form, read not the stars, but the book of heaven, your mother's life, your fate. Song was shocked. He didn't know what to say. Tears ran down his cheeks. "I accept." Now, sometimes the hardest choices are the quietest ones, not made on battlefields, but in the quiet of a room, in moments where nobody else sees what's going on. Nobody can see what we're thinking. Now, Song Tao, he was being tested, like he thought he was being tested on knowledge, but he was actually being tested for what was in his heart. So, true virtue asks for nothing. And when someone chooses duty not for reward, but because it is right, that is when they earn something deeper than recognition. All right, let me know what you think in the comments below. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who still believes that quiet choices can shape eternity. I'll see you in the next story.